Hello, everyone, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network every Thursday at 1 p.m. And you can also find me on theconsciousresistance.com and theseedsofliberty.com. So today we have Katie Testa coming in from Detroit, right?
Yes.
Trying to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Detroit. She's an unschooler of a 9-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl, and 4-year-old girl. She's a voluntarist, anarchist, truth seeker, freedom fighter, nonviolent communication facilitator, and coach. She teaches workshops and intensives. She travels quite a bit, and so she's affiliated with the nycnvc.org website, and her website is mdnvc.org. So we'll put all that in the description, and you can find her on Facebook. Delilah Declare, awesome name, very cool. and her Facebook page is Metro Detroit Nonviolent Communication. If you want to go over there, give her a like, because we all need more likes, right? Everyone wants to be liked. So, so Katie, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I first heard about you through your interview with Luis on his Emancipated Human. And I'm like, wow, this woman is too happy. No, just, no, it was a great. It was
her, yeah.
This woman is just bubbling with life, and that's what we need, because, like we were talking about before, anarchist has such a gloomy connotation. People get scared of it. They freak out. They're like, oh, you want like the people killing and raping and murdering and stealing from each other, and that movie The Purge, Anarchy. That's what you want. That's that what you. Is that really? So it's kind of funny. It's like, no, actually, I'm just a regular guy, and I think that we shouldn't rob from each other. Isn't that such a revolutionary concept, right?
Yeah, we actually want peace, right?
Right. It's such you're just a utopian, idealistic, person. So so before we get into to the topics, can you just go into some of your background in how you became a voluntarist, what influenced you, podcast, books, or personalities, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I had my first child when I was pretty young, and as soon as I had him, I wanted to really begin to understand like human development. How do people learn? How can I help this human being thrive and just have the best life ever? And so I started reading books and getting really curious and really enjoying just raising my baby. And yeah, when he turned about two and a half, family members started to ask, like, when he's going to go to preschool, when will you send him off to school? And just in my heart, like my heart just sank down into my gut, and I knew like that was not what I wanted to do. I really, really wanted to experience this life that I brought into the world, and I just got so much pleasure out of watching him learn and discover the world and see it all as new. And I wanted that to continue, and I felt a responsibility to do that as well, because I chose to have him. So I started to research alternative education approaches. Homeschooling was the first thing that I started to Google. At that point, I was still a statist, and I went to the library and checked out like every book they had on education, pedagogy. I read like a ton of Maria Montessori stuff, and a lot of her perspectives really resonated with me, but there were a couple of things that weren't quite right, particularly her perspective on like fantasy and imaginary play, that this was somehow like an escape from reality and not helpful. And I think in my observations of children, it's actually a way of getting into reality and practicing doing what adults do, and trying to discover it in using their minds. So that wasn't quite right. And then I came across John Holt, which maybe you're familiar with his work.
Oh, yeah.
He's the granddaddy of unschooling, just a brilliant, insightful individual who really just shone a bright light on the nature of the educational system and the nature of it, and the problem with a coercive approach to learning, or the idea that individuals kind of stuff information into, and that would somehow lead to like a well-developed, happy, satisfied human being. And in my personal experience as a child in the public school system, that wasn't the case. And talking to a lot of people, I'm hearing that, from, it's not just me, I guess is what I'm saying. So I decided to look more into this whole idea of unschooling, and I started to look into like the people who are actually doing this, and addressing some of my fears about it. And through my research, just it made sense to me, and I thought that I would give it a shot. And I haven't looked back since then. So I was already kind of applying the idea of freedom or liberty to my children, right? But I just hadn't universalized this idea to adults yet. And at one point, I got curious about economics, and I actually am a high school dropout, so I didn't take any like formal econ classes, which I think could be kind of a benefit because I could look at it without any sort of biased lens. And I saw my husband at the time, his textbook for some econ class that he took, and it was discussing leaving the gold standard and like why that happened. And I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. And then they just kind of glossed it over and moved on as if like that had no consequences or implications in the value of money. And that didn't make sense to me. So I started to Google more about, economics, and I found Murray Rothbard and Mises.org, and I just like devoured this information. Totally blew my mind open and to like a new way of looking at things. It made total sense to me, that I discovered the non-aggression principle, and this was already really in alignment with how I was choosing to live my life. I just didn't have words to put to it. I was practicing peaceful and attachment parenting and unschooling, and I had a let live kind of philosophy or attitude towards the grown adults in my life, for the most part, pretty much politically apathetic. But once I found Rothbard, that kind of flipped the switch, and dove through a few more rabbit holes and started meeting other people who felt this way and getting into really interesting discussions that just kind of lit me up. And so that's kind of like the short story of how.
That's a short story? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah. Murray Rothbard is the gateway drug for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Me too. He, I think with me, it was a creature from Jekyll Island. And then, Murray Rothbard, Anatomy of the State, What Has Government Done to Our Money, and The Case for the 100% Gold Dollar. And it's so awesome that those things are free on Mises.org, right? How much would the spread of knowledge would have been retarded if it was not free, right? And if you had to pay for it and it was like under lock and key, so that's such a wonderful resource for people.
Definitely.
But that's it's an awesome journey. I mean, peaceful parenting is something that I think can really change the world. Peaceful parenting and unschooling, it's like treating kids with respect. Like, what a revolutionary concept.
Yeah.
and kindness, right?
Yeah.
It's like, my kid is not my property, right? Or my subject, and I can't do what I want to him. I don't have that right? Even though I'm bigger, older, and stronger, still he has rights of his own. He has self-ownership because he's a living, breathing human being, right? With passions and desires and needs, and we have to respect that, right? So, yeah, awesome stuff. So how do you explain to people about, like, people that you meet on the street, like, or occasionally, casually, do you bring up these topics with those people, or how do you introduce it?
I don't intentionally like proselytize my beliefs. I wait until people get curious about what I'm doing, and then they ask me, because I think that's a big part of kind of the unschooling approach with my children, is that I'm not trying to go and teach them something they don't want to learn.
Right.
And we all know how that feels, I think, to be told how to do something that you weren't really interested in learning how to do, or maybe you already know how to do. It kind of, in a subtle way, expresses like, I don't totally trust you to figure this out on your own because maybe you're not intelligent enough or whatever. People, and obviously most people don't actually mean that. Yeah, so that's kind of my philosophy. So when people ask me about my life and they find out that I have kids, and people ask what grade they're in, and I say, oh, we don't do grades, and they'll be like, what? And I'll say, well, I'll say we educate at home, or we follow an inquiry-based model, or we're life learners, and then they might ask what my typical day looks like, which that's a really challenging question to answer in and of itself, because every day is so different.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of my approach, and the same with voluntarism. At one point, I was a more outspoken kind of advocate for that perspective, but I found that doing it that way turned a lot more people off than I wanted to be turning off, and it was kind of like already speaking to people who already agreed with me, and there might have been like one or two, a handful of people who were like, oh, that makes sense, and then changed their mind. But the most connection that I've gotten over conversations about these ideas have been one where someone has come and asked me just because they're curious and they want to understand already on their own.
Yeah, indeed. I do a fair amount of writing in my videos and my podcasts and everything, and it's true, when you become more and more outspoken, you do run the risk of alienating some people, perhaps some friends that you used to have. So it definitely is a something that you have to be cognizant of. So let's talk about your website. So would you say that that's related to voluntarism and unschooling? What you do?
My gosh, yes. Everything I do is all related.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I discovered nonviolent communication through a friend of mine, Wes Bertrand. You may be familiar with him. He does a Complete Liberty podcast. He's written a couple of books. And it was another kind of John Holt moment for me when I found the work of Marshall Rosenberg, that he had articulated something so clearly that made so much sense. I could see that this applied if everybody knew how to practice nonviolent communication within themselves and with their interpersonal relationships, that the government would dissolve, because the belief that I have an authority over another person would just be so it wouldn't meet my needs for consideration, for respect, for contribution, for care, for all of that, for nonviolence, for peace. And so this is just another avenue to really get clear about the nature of some of these social institutions, like government, like schools, like religion, and so and for me, I believe that all of those social institutions are a reflection of kind of our own individual brain software, if you will. Like the government would exist if we didn't believe that it was a viable strategy to get our needs met, and that it somehow made sense. And while you and I might kind of see through that, the majority of people don't, and so the institution is there. But if people understood kind of the nature of it, it would disappear. Nobody would want to participate in it anymore because it would be against their values, right? So NVC is one way of getting a lot of clarity within yourself about your own motivations, your own needs, and also seeing what you have in common with other people in your life and how to communicate that clearly, and also to hear what their needs are and their perspectives are in a really clear way, and to hear that. So it's a way of creating more connection in your life, however much connection you want. And I think this is kind of a way to upgrade our brain software to transcend ideas like these domination hierarchies that we have in our society.
You reminded me when you were talking about government disappearing. I forget who said it, but the quote is, if the violence or the guns were removed from government, all that would be left of it would look like just a failed business with a crappy product that nobody wants to buy.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, the government does attempt to provide services and products that people need and want, but they do it in a way that is inefficient and also is based on stealing property from other people and using it how they think that it ought to be used, instead of allowing people the freedom to make those choices on their own. Actual win-win ways, which is also a big element of nonviolent communication. Is it's all about finding win-win strategies to meet our needs without anybody sacrificing oneself to the other. Yeah. And so the idea is to only ever do anything that you want to do, only ever do anything from the same joy as a child feeding a hungry duck. That's a quote from Marshall Rosenberg. And I imagine if people were able to live by that, it would be a much different place. So right. Talking about democracy, I'm reading a book now called Beyond Democracy by Frank Karsten, and it's funny. He's like, when you complain or criticize about democracies, most people think, so what do you want, a dictatorship? like that's the only pull up like so if everybody doesn't draw consensus and vote on what we should eat, and then we all eat the same thing, you think one guy should decide what everyone should eat? Of course we're like, no, decide for yourself what you want to eat. Yeah.
So it's people have this it's called the false dichotomy, right? If it's not this, it's that, black and white, right? There's no in between, no gray areas.
Absolutely. That's another element of nonviolent communication that I see a parallel with to just exactly what you're saying, is that so often we're focused on one way to fulfill our needs, to get our needs met, one strategy. It's either this or nothing, or it's this situation that I really like or this situation that I really don't like, right? Mm-hmm. And in reality, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of ways for us to meet our needs, thousands of strategies. If we can stop focusing on the strategy itself as a need. And that's kind of where people get tangled up. For instance, I have to have a house to be happy. I might need shelter, but does it have to be a mansion on, in Martha's Vineyard, or, like there's so many different ways of finding shelter. It doesn't need to be just one way. And yeah. And so people get into conflict over this as well. Like, we should do this with these resources. No, we should do this with these resources. And instead of seeing that there's many different ways to solve these problems that we have with one another.
Cool. So. Can you give me some examples? So you gave me one. Can you give me a few more, like how you apply nonviolent communication in your life?
Oh, wow.
Like maybe with your kids?
Yeah, I can think of lots of different ways. Essentially, my approach to conflict, which is inevitable in human life, like my kids get into little spats and conflicts or disagreements, and what I'm doing as a parent is I'm looking for needs. And so in nonviolent communication, needs are universal. All humans have the same set of needs, and this is what connects all of us. This is what we have in common, and this is where we can get connection. And our feelings arise as a result of these needs either being fulfilled or unfulfilled, or based on the metness of those needs. So you might feel sad, frustrated, or angry if your needs aren't satisfied in the way that you'd like, or happy and excited and joyful, celebratory, whatever, when your needs are fulfilled. So I'm observing the feelings in my children and looking for the underlying needs. And if I can get clarity on what their needs are, I can find what strategies that we can use to meet those needs. And it might be, they have one preference. They want to play with this one toy. They both want to. And what they really want is fun and play. Those are their needs. And it doesn't need to just be with this one toy. We can find other activities, other things to do that also meet our needs for fun, play, engagement. So that's kind of an overview of what I might do. I could give you maybe a more specific situation if you would like.
Sure.
Yeah, let me just think of something. Or in my own personal relationships, like I mentioned that I'm divorced, I'm a single mom, and I learned nonviolent communication actually before I decided to get divorced, and I applied it to my life and did an assessment of what my needs were and realized that they were pervasively unmet, and that I learned how to articulate this, and that my needs matter and they're important, and so were my husband's, and that we could find ways to meet our needs that worked for both of us. And and it turned out that we had different preferences around strategies to meet our needs, and our values weren't in alignment. And I got a lot of clarity around this. I chose to do that relationship because it wasn't enriching my life, and I wasn't excited and happy to be there, and neither was he. So that kind of was like a huge, what some people might view as like a negative thing that happened, which for me has brought me a lot more freedom and happiness and fulfillment and self-connection.
Cool. So any other examples you can think of?
Yeah. So with my kids, in particular, my youngest, who's 4 now, but a couple of years ago, one thing that I picked up from Maria Montessori was to use like real tools and real glasses, real dishes, and furniture that fit the children's bodies, because they want to participate in the world in a real way and not just pretend, right? So, so one of the things I did was to use drinking glasses with my children, and not give them plastic, which requires a bit more awareness and observation, and also to, they need to develop skills to handle that in a way that works and not break it on the floor so that spills whatever all over. And of course, this is part of the process, though, is dropping the glass and breaking it is part of the process of learning to hold a glass and pay attention, be aware of your body. And so initially, when I first started this, I was pretty excited I was really in touch with my underlying needs for doing this. Like, I wanted them to learn in a way that made sense. And but over time and enough broken glasses and enough stress in my life, the broken glass was not very fun when I found it on the floor, right? So I would get angry or upset, and I would react and say like, oh my gosh, now we've got to clean this up, and we're just about to leave and get out the door, and I don't want to deal with this right now. And like really just communicate that in my body language, my tone of voice. And my kids started to, and this is even though I value peaceful parenting, right? Like, I would get triggered, and this comes up. Like, it's difficult to kind of change the habit and what was done to us as kids.
Sure.
And so yeah, one day I walked into the kitchen and I saw that there was broken glass, and nobody had come and told me about it. And it just hit me like why that was, that they were afraid to tell me that this had happened because they didn't want to see my reaction to this. They didn't want me to be disappointed or upset about it. And I felt so sad about that, because I don't want to lose connection with my kids. I want them to feel safe to come and tell me anything, especially something as small as a broken glass. And I realized that I had been reacting to this, and it was something I was already, somewhat aware of, but this really just hit me. And so I went and found my daughter, and I said, I noticed that there's broken glass on the floor. And this is part of NVC, is to make a clear observation without any evaluations or interpretations or judgments of the situation. Like, you were a slob, or you were careless and you made a huge mess. That would be filled with my own judgments and interpretations of what happened. But my observation is, I noticed that there's a broken glass on the floor. And I'm curious if nobody came and told me because they felt scared. And they were like, yeah, so I connected to the feeling that they were afraid at that moment. And I said, okay, I understand, maybe in the past, like, mommy has reacted to this, and I'm really sad to hear that, because I want you to feel safe and to be able to trust that what you tell me, I'm going to be okay with no matter what. And they were like, okay, yeah. So, and in that moment, I felt a lot more connection to my daughter, and that we kind of started to rebuild this bridge to the connection and trust that had been eroded from my reaction. And so I just matter-of-factly cleaned up the glass, made sure that the area was safe, and then I was more mindful the next time something was spilled or broken, that I paused and stopped before I said anything and before I did anything. And I took a deep breath, and I checked in with myself, how I was feeling. And usually, like, the first thing might have been like a flush of frustration or anger, or overwhelm, even depending on what's going on in my day. That day, I'm juggling a lot. And then it's because I'm having judgment thoughts, like, they should be more care, at odds with reality, right? And so I just observe my thoughts about it and don't necessarily believe them as being true, and connect with the feelings underneath that, which is just frustration or sadness. I want ease, I want things to go with I want ease. I want things to go in a way that is simple and neat and uncomplicated, and that's not reality with 3 children at home. It's just not. So my need for order comes up, and that's a big one with kids too, as order. So I just get connected to my feelings and my needs underneath that, and then I also get connected to my deeper underlying need, which is connection with my kids. And that's the most important thing I don't want to lose. And when I'm grounded in that need, my response to the situation totally transforms from one of being frustrated or angry or impatient, overwhelmed, to one of care, and concern, and wanting them to be safe, and just also to teach them that it's not a big deal if something spills. Like, this is just we can deal with that, no problem. And so over time, as I've brought more awareness to myself and the way that I respond to these different situations, like broken glasses, or, somebody gets into the flour and it's like all over I'm sure you've seen pictures on the internet. Kids get into stuff and make big messes. As I've gotten more aware and connected to myself, then I've noticed a connection between me and my children has improved and maintained. So my oldest child is almost 10, and he comes to me and tells me everything that he's thinking about, like the big problems that he's got with his friends and concerns he has about, like, death and human sexuality and like existence and all of that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I really feel just like a lot of trust and it's just made my life so much more wonderful to have that tool to fall back on, and that lens to look through, that clear way of connecting to myself and what's motivating me and my behaviors, and also what's motivating other people and their behaviors, and to find a common ground and to be able to communicate and get on the same page together. So
you said so many great things that I want to talk about. I'm probably going to forget some of them, but the first one I want to say is, when I talk to people about parenting, I say that parenting is like a triangle, and you have 3 corners, and you can only have 2, right? You have 3 corners, and one is a clean house, one is like happy kids, and your sanity. You heard this one?
No, but I'm just guessing. I'm from mom. So.
Right. Clean house, happy kids, and your sanity, and you can only have 2. So it's you're right. Like, and my wife, she usually tells people that, when you have kids, you should automatically assume 50% of your property will be destroyed. And you shouldn't go crazy about it, because kids are kids. That's how they learn. They fall. They scrape their knees. They they fall off their bikes. They break glass. They make messes, and it's not because they're malicious or spiteful or trying to make us angry. They're just trying to learn about the world. Yes. And to get angry at them, and even worse, to hit them, is just to complicate matters and just add layers of confusion, and trauma to somebody who's just trying to learn about the world. They're just, they just got here.
In our modern society and Western cultures, like the only, I think, kind of manifestation of this systematic distrust of children. If you look at other places in the world, it's not like just assumed that children are trying to manipulate us or trying to cause us trouble, or can't be trusted to learn and to do, real things successfully by trial and error and using the scientific method. And and a lot of it is just the intergenerational transfer of what was done to the parent, to the child, and then from that child to their child, and so on and so on. And without bringing awareness and really conscious effort in healing your own kind of pains and things that happened to you as a kid, it's almost impossible to change. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, the appeal to antiquity. We have to do exactly what our parents, because it has been done like this for many, many generations, and it's also the cycle of violence, right? So unschoolers and peaceful parenters and attachment parenters, they are breaking the cycle of violence in the family unit, and that's awesome, because it's a vicious cycle, and once it's broken, it doesn't have to be broken again. It's just the children don't have to learn, or they don't have to heal from their traumatic experience at government school, because they never experienced it, right? So it just propagates a feeling of peace and kindness and compassion and things like that. But the other thing I wanted to say is, you were talking about how you get angry, and I feel that too, and my wife too, and she calms me down, and I calm her down a lot. I think you're right. I think that is remnants of our past and how we were raised, and you see your parents and how they acted when things went wrong, and you're like, all right, that must be normal, that's how you act, right? But now with you're changing that pattern, and you're teaching your kids, no, there's a different way that you can act when things go wrong, and it doesn't have to be with anger and frustration and resentment, all these negative emotions that just cause more pain, right? You can actually, it can be calm and collected, and talk with soft tones, and it's just so hard, and but I try as much as possible to do it all the time. So it's so important to just calm down.
And it's really hard. It is really hard, and I want to be totally transparent about that. Like, I'm not a perfect parent.
Exactly.
I definitely have ideals and principles that I strive to live by, and values that I really want my actions to be in alignment with, but that doesn't always happen, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that in the attachment or peaceful parenting communities. I think there can be a lot of judgment slung at each other and all of this, and I would really love to see that change and more transparency be brought to the challenges that people face, and shifting paradigms and breaking out of how we've been programmed to interact with one another, and the habit, the decades of habit of think about how much time you spend in school, and how a decade or so or almost 2 decades in a family unit, and how much time you're picking up and absorbing what happens in that social structure, and what that does to your brain and your neural networks, and how it takes time and consciousness to do something different and to build new networks in your mind, so that it's easier to respond with compassion and patience and self-connection and in a calm way. And but it's totally possible. And I really, for me personally, nonviolent communication has been an awesome tool, an awesome set of skills, an awesome lens to look through that's really made this much easier. And the more I practice it, the easier it gets, the more wonderful my life gets. And my behaviors are more in alignment with my values. My family's more connected and happier. And it is possible. It is possible. Even though some days are hard and sometimes it doesn't all go perfectly, you can always go back also after something like that and talk to your kids about it, and be honest about how hard it is to not get upset, and to maybe work together to find different strategies to de-escalate things. So
and the other thing that you reminded me of was when you said you don't want to destroy the bond with your children, and you saw that trust was going because they weren't communicating with you anymore, right? Things that were happening, they weren't honest. And that's so true. It's like when children grow up in an authoritarian environment, they're obedient and they comply with their parents, not because they understand morality and they want to how do you say, like, they have a conscience, but because they don't want to get hurt or punished, right? That's why they comply. And you don't want your kids to do things for fear of punishment, right?
Not yet, buddy.
That's that's not that's not what you want, because then they're not human beings anymore. They're robots, they're drones, they're and you don't want that. That's really harmful for an individual. And so I don't view my children as my subjects or my property or anything like that, or my inferior, because that's exactly what authoritarian parenting sets up, and that's kind of a precursor to sending them to government school, which is the authority figure is now the teacher, right, the principal.
Yeah.
Right? And there's always an authority figure, and you got to ask for anything. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I do this? Can I do that?
Yeah.
And so instead of that, I talk to them as an equal, as a peer. Like, I'm a friend. I'm not your superior that you just have to listen to me because I said so. You can disagree. We'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. We'll discuss things. Let's have conversations. And it's so important to establish that connection, because you're right. Like, you want them to view you as an advisor that they would want to come to for advice.
Yes.
Not that they're forced to because you're older and stronger. No, but that they want to because they value your advice and they see that it's useful and effective. That's what you want them, or me anyway.
Yeah, there's kind of the idea of authority through coercion and force, and then the authority, like the legitimate authority, because you have wisdom, experience, and they can trust you. And they know that you're not going to tell them what they should or shouldn't do, disconnected from what they're wanting for their own lives. And I know I've heard this, I can't remember the source, but just to treat your child as you would like your neighbor or a friend. And that's not to say not to have healthy boundaries, right? But you wouldn't yell at your neighbor for dropping a glass on your floor, right? that wouldn't make sense. If you were a guest in my home, I wouldn't yell at you about that. Just to keep that in mind, that these are actual human beings with feelings and needs just like us, and they're just a little bit behind developmentally, but they're catching up quickly, and they're learning everything through what we model for them, and that's what they're learning, is how you behave and what you do and what you say. They pick up more from what you do than what you say, is what I'm trying to say. So you can tell them, to do something all day long, but if they see you doing something else, that's confusing, I think.
Big time. Cognitive dissonance. You're right.
Yeah.
And I try so hard, if I see something that my son is doing or my daughter's doing, and I don't necessarily approve of it, but still, I try as little as possible to assert the fact that I'm the father. Like you said, I don't want to assert that. I don't want to say don't do that, unless they're playing with knives or something like that. But for the most part, as much as possible, give them freedom to do what they want, right? And explore and have fun, and just learn through play, right? That's exactly what I understand unschooling to be, right? It's a play-based learning. It's child-driven education. It's whatever the child is interested in, that's what they're going to be learning. Like, I saw a great meme. You see a kid painting with his fingers, finger painting, and it says, "There's no such thing as just playing. This is how I learn." Yeah.
Absolutely. I think John Holt pointed out that, learning begins the day of birth, or even in the womb. And
in the womb.
Right after I said that, I realized, he could have maybe started that a bit earlier.
Exactly.
Might just tweak that a bit. But
improve it.
But that human beings are natural scientists. They use a scientific method, and they're insanely curious. Like, this curiosity is as much of a drive as hunger, as thirst, as for physical contact with another human being. Like, they want to understand how the world works, why things are the way they are. If you spend time with kids, all they do is ask thousands of questions and do experiments with the physical world until someone comes along and interrupts that and decides that they know better what they ought to be learning, and it's this, according to somebody else's arbitrary standards that have nothing to do with their actual life or what maybe they even want to be doing. Doesn't make any sense. And a couple of things that you were saying brought up two concepts for me in NVC, which is power with versus power over. And so the typical public school education system and also parenting model are more of a power over approach, like doing things to people instead of with them through support and guidance, care, respect, giving them the information and the reasons why we do things. And also another concept, which is force. And sometimes it is necessary that we use our bigness and our strength and our experience and our wisdom to protect our kids from hurting themselves, maybe from running out in the street or touching a hot stove, two classic examples, or from hurting another sibling. I can think about all kinds of things versus, spanking the kid for doing something that you didn't like, using the punitive use of force for punishing them because they were bad and wrong and they should have been good. So just two different aspects or two different approaches. I think one is more in alignment with what I'm after,
Yeah. When I tell people about, unschooling, and I make posts on Facebook and, talk about freedom and let the kids explore and everything and no spanking. And they're like, so you would let your kids run in the street? It's amazing. Like, it's like either you spank them or you let them run in the street. That you have to choose which one.
Yeah, again with that false dichotomy, right? It's either or, but that's not true.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because that's how most people have been brought up. It's like I was spanked and I turned out okay. And like, well, I would debate that.
Yeah, it's pretty tragic to hear people saying that, and I would love to see more of the population kind of have more ease in considering alternative approaches to relating with one another. And I just find it pretty disheartening and sad that that's not the case. A lot of people get pretty upset when they hear these ideas because they're really different, and maybe it's painful to think that something like this happened to them and it wasn't okay. They don't want to think about it.
And the other thing is that if you just look at it from like a standpoint of exertion, the authoritarian parenting and then sending them to government school, that's the easy way of parenting. That's the lazy way of parenting. You don't have to do much. You just send them there. The teacher will take care of them. They're gonna be fine, Or authoritarian parenting, do as I say, and that's it. Case closed. No conversation, no debate. Forget about what the kid wants. Right? That's it. But when you actually open a dialogue, that's difficult because then you have to be engaged, right? You have to find solutions, and you got to figure out a problem and how do we do this, and and that's awesome. I love that. I mean, it's so sad. You're talking about the questioning when kids start with the barrage of questioning, and so many times I hear parents say, "Oh, it's so annoying. My kid's asking all these questions," and I'm like, "What are you talking about annoying? He's learning. That's how he's learning." And you're just shutting him off, or you can't wait until he stops. And it's so sad. And then they're gonna figure out or get the message that if they want to figure something out, they shouldn't go to you, because you don't have anything to respond with because you're just bored of their questions.
Or even that curiosity is something that isn't welcome. That it's not cool to ask questions,
right?
And that in itself is really tragic. So I mean, and I can empathize with the parents that get kind of tired of the incessant questions, but I do personally get pretty excited about that. Like I love to see what they're curious about, and like they think about things in a totally fresh way that I might have forgotten about. Like before I thought I knew what things were, and they help me to realize what I don't actually know. And if I don't know, I don't just say I don't know. I say I don't know. Let's go find out. And show them the tools to kind of uncover these things and answer the questions that they have, or let's go talk to somebody who does know about this. I'm honest about my infallibility and that I don't know everything, and that humans don't know everything either. Like there are some things that humanity just doesn't have figured out yet, and that's really exciting too, because you could be the person to figure that out. You're asking the question, that could be your thing. And it's pretty cool. Like today, my daughter Ella was asking about whether or not scientists could make some sort of body modification so that you could fly. And I said, well, I don't think they have, some way to augment your body to do that yet, but maybe you could be the person to figure that out. And she's like, I don't know if I want to be a scientist or not. And I was like, well, you could be the person to hire the scientist to figure that out, and she was really digging that idea. So
that's awesome. Yeah. It's so cool. It's okay.
And a question. Go on.
Say again.
Oh, I get big questions like what where did the first human being come from?
Ooh,
and
nice.
What happens after I die, and just concepts of time, like yesterday, tomorrow, and today. Like, is it tomorrow now? And like still trying to figure that out, and it's cool. I enjoy that they're just trying to. Yeah, they want to understand the world and be really effective and participate fully in it, just like we do. They want to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, it's really exciting. I think so.
Yeah, God, you're saying such beautiful things. I'm almost going to cry. But yeah, it's like for me, I'm a chess player and a piano player. And I've been, loving those things like my passion since I was 12 years old. And my wife, she's always telling me you should teach the kids chess and piano.
Yeah.
So what do you think I said to that? Like, well, I play chess a lot. Like they see me, we go to parks and I bring my chess set and I play with other people. And I play piano on the weekends occasionally, and they see that. And if they, they come sometimes, they bang on the piano keys, and that's fine. And I'm like, well, if they want to, they're going to ask me to teach them. And that's fine. But, for me to sit them down and say, now we're going to learn piano, that's a complete turnoff, complete deterrent. And I think it's counterproductive, and when they're ready, when they really want to, they're going to ask me and they're going to want to learn and they're going to be awesome at it. So, and this is the other thing I wanted to tell you is it's like as parents, I think a lot of parents are like this. We all have our desire, or let's say our interests and our hobbies and our belief systems, right? Like, I'm chess and piano and you're nonviolent communication and, voluntarist and all this kind of stuff. And what we would love is for our kids to be like us. Most people, I think, right? We would love, you would love your kids to do nonviolent communication. I would love my kids to do chess and piano. And that's the problem. We're always trying to impose our beliefs onto our kids. But you have to ask the question, well, what do they want? maybe they don't want to do a nonviolent. Maybe they don't want to do that as a job. Maybe as a career. Like maybe they want to do something else, and that's fine. Like that's completely fine. They have their own lives. So I think that's something that most parents have to realize is that we all want to impose what we think is important. Like my grandfather, he's like PhD in physics. So what do you think he wants to teach kids? Physics and mathematics. What do you think he thinks is important for kids to learn?
Not piano.
Not piano, right? So he's like, mathematics is not. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what do you think about, like, have you met parents like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've met parents like that. I've met children who have grown up into adults to do what their parents did because they were taught that,
Right.
Like, I'm going to be a pilot just like dad is a pilot. And then they totally follow their parents' life path and they end up miserable.
Yeah.
And then they end up like having some career change in the middle of their life. And, and as far as like with me and nonviolent communication, I've never taught my kids anything formally about NVC, but I practice it with them and I model it.
That's the most important. That's the most important part.
And I see them practicing it with each other and with me, and I've never taught them ever.
That's awesome.
Like the other day, we went to the Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest in Delton, Michigan, which is a voluntarist event.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was awesome. We camped with like a bunch of other families, other unschoolers, peaceful parents.
Me feel dumb, man.
Yeah, it was great.
Cool.
And now I totally forgot what.
I'm sorry. You went to the Michigan thing and you camped out and.
Yeah. The modeling and my son Noah, he was doing NVC with his sister, who was kind of frustrated because there were a lot of kids there, and it wasn't really clear like whose property was whose, because we were all kind of in this orchard and lots of tents, and so kids were coming into our space, and she wanted to have some space just by herself. She wanted to hang out in her hammock and not have anyone be talking to her or touching her, and that wasn't going on, and so she was getting upset. And my son Noah said to Ella, like, "Oh, Ella, do you really just want some space right now, just to be left alone and not to have these kids around?" And she was like, "Yeah." And just that sentence right there is something that I would have said to her, and that I have said to him, like, guessing what their feelings and their needs are. Like, you just want some space. Because I know that it's true. They learn what you do. And that's why it's so important to work on yourself, and don't worry about working on your kids. The more that you focus on yourself and getting really clear on what you want in life and being successful at that, they'll learn that, they'll pick that up, and they'll reflect that. They're kind of like little mirrors. And so that's what I was. I'm happy that I remembered.
No, it's so true. Like if I really wanted to teach my kids chess and piano, I should play so much piano and so much and do so much chess and show them that I love to do it, right? Yeah. And if they really want to learn it, then they're going to want to learn it because they can see how much I love to do it. That's a perfect way to instill the love of doing things, right? And that's really so important that I think I was talking to this other woman I interviewed who's an unschooler, and she was saying that teaching kids to do things for the value of doing them, not because they're going to get a reward, right?
Yeah.
Or punishment.
and intrinsic motivation, right?
Right. And one of the things that she was saying was that she doesn't give her kids chores, which kind of is revolting to a lot of parents, a lot of authoritarian parents, because that's what most kids are raised with, is chores. You just got to do stuff that you don't like, but some things in life you're not going to enjoy doing, and you just got to do it. And actually, I heard that explanation for public school as well. Not all things in life are fun. Some things you just have to do.
Yeah, that's a whole nother concept in NVC. I'll keep drawing parallels.
Awesome.
That people learn that they to do things because they should and because they have to, and not because they want to, and because they're meeting their own needs through doing so. And that's exactly what you just said. It's all about finding that intrinsic motivation to do things that you're inspired and excited to be doing, and you'll naturally be really productive, and you'll naturally learn a lot doing those things. And another thing is, your child might see you like totally dedicated and committed to playing the piano and loving it and just be passionate about it, and they might not ever pick up the piano, but they will observe you doing something that you love and that really enriches your life, and that's super exciting and awesome to you, and they'll find that thing and have that same energy and that same that same sense of life around what they do. And that's what it's all about. It's not like being exactly little mini clones. It's about their what's their inner motivation, like why are they doing what they're doing. I want my kids to be happy, I want them to be excited to be alive, and not just life has to suck. No, it doesn't. It can be awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Life just sucks. What are you going to do, And my grandfather, I remember he said, and he's not too keen on homeschooling, never mind unschooling.
Yeah.
But one question he asked is, what do you want your kids to be? Don't you want your kids to have a successful job,
Doctors
a nice
lawyers,
house, a nice house and a nice car? Don't you want that? And I said, no, I want them to be happy. That's all. That's fine. Doesn't matter what they're doing, what house they have, what car they have. If they're not happy, then that's not good. That's not a success in my book, because if you're not happy with what you're doing, that's to me, that's akin to failure. Forget about monetary gain and, wealth and assets and things like that. If you're not feeling spiritually fulfilled, you're on the wrong path. That's the way. So you get that question too, like what do you want your kids to be? People ask.
You know what? I have never been asked that actually, but people will ask my kids what they want to be
Ah, okay.
when they grow up, which
And
I think is kind of a funny question
yeah,
because,
it is.
you know, like, and who says that you can only be one thing and you have to
Right.
choose, and you have to choose it now, you
Right,
know?
right. I know, I know.
And my kids kind of like scratch their heads at that, like, I don't know, you know, like they're not thinking about that. They're in the moment, what's relevant to their lives today.
Right.
And as they get more exposure to the world and different people and different things, they'll discover that in their own time, and it'll happen. And I trust that. So I'm not stressed when they don't have an answer.
And that question to me kind of assumes that kids are incomplete. And,
Yeah.
it's like they're lacking in something. You're not grown up yet, but you're going to be grown up. And so what are you going to be? And like you said, you have to choose one thing. And like, oh, man, this is so stressful. I can only choose one thing. Oh, no, what am I going to do? What if I choose the wrong thing?
Yeah, and that life is kind of like, oh, you'll go through school, you graduate, find a life partner, have kids, and the
Right.
whole like
Right.
that's the story that people have been told for a long time, that that's a happy, successful life. And I think a lot of people have lived that and discovered that that's not actually the case, you know?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Then, and then, they have their job, their 401k, and then they retire. And then I was talking to this one woman, and she was saying, and then the man is like fishing on his boat in his retirement. He's thinking, you know what? What did I do? I could have done this, I could have done this fishing a long time ago. And
yeah.
instead I devoted my life to pleasing, satisfying other people or culture or what society
Mm,
expects of me or my family
yes.
expects of me. And it's constantly seeking approval or things like that. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
I also get a lot of times I'll get people quizzing my children, which I think is
Quizzing.
interesting. Yeah, like,
Oh,
oh,
that's
you're
sad.
homeschooled,
That's
so
sad.
like, do you know 4 plus 4? And my son will be there like rolling his eyes, like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Um, and that's another thing. John Holt, he's like one of my favorite guys. So I'll keep quoting him.
Sure,
He
sure.
talks about the difference between a quiz question and an actual question.
Uh-huh.
And like an example of this would be, say I'm in Manhattan and I'm like, hey, how do I get to 26th and 5th?
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know at that point, and I'm thinking that you have the answer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that you do, and that you can tell me, and I'll benefit from this, and then I can
Mm.
move on.
Right.
Whereas if I did know how to get to 26th and 5th,
Ooh.
why would I be asking you
You,
to test
you
you and
just
see if you knew? Because I think
testing.
that maybe you don't and you should. And
Ooh.
it's like, I don't totally trust that you know what you need to know and that you're
Mm-hmm.
capable of finding out what you need to find out when you need to find it out. And so, yeah, I get kind of bothered when this happens. And it tends to be like family members who have teaching backgrounds or acquaintances that kind of come from a different model. And I can also hear in that, though, that they really care and want to contribute to my children's success and make sure that they're okay. And they're worried maybe a little bit because it's just different, and they haven't done the research, and they haven't had the experiences that I have had. And yeah, it takes some trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. I hear the kids are getting rowdy, so
Yeah.
but yeah, I just wanted to say that yeah, that's a really good point. That it's like, again, parents are measuring their kids or other people's kids that are being homeschooled or unschooled. They're measuring them according to their own interests or hobbies or passions, or knowledge that they gained. If I go up to somebody and I say, "Do you know how to play piano? Do you know how to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata?"
Yeah,
No.
like what?
What is wrong with you?
Well, you should know.
Well, you should.
I taught you that.
I know. It's like I like to think about all of the bits of information that human beings have thought of, and the books that have been written, and the articles, and people talking, and philosophers, and all of that information. And we think that a certain fraction of a percentage is important for everybody to know.
Yeah.
Who makes that choice? Who makes that determination? Based on what? Like, what authority do you have to determine that this information is what everybody should know, right? So,
Yeah, it's entirely arbitrary, and it's learning isn't scalable. Like, you can't you can't really scale it up to work for the same 500 people, because each person out of those 500 is an individual with their own preferences and styles and personalities and experiences and life contexts, and it's impossible to make something that's going to work for everybody. And education doesn't need to be going through a factory like making thousands of crayons that all need to be identical and the same, right? We don't want everyone to be the same. There are different people with different strengths and talents that can do different things, and if they have the freedom to find out what that is, and the freedom and the resources to do it, then the world would be so much richer, so much more vibrant and interesting, I think. And I'm excited knowing that my kids will have the other parents that I know that are brave enough to jump in there and do something totally different and against the grain, despite criticism, despite the challenges, despite kind of, having to, heal yourself and what happened to you to do something different. And I'm really hopeful that is one path that can transform the culture that we live in, is through parenting and education in a totally different way.
Excellent. So I assume you're a fan of the IQ test and SATs? No, I'm just kidding. Right. Yeah. Let's see how you score on this arbitrary test, and then we're going to determine if you're intelligent or not. Right? Mm-hmm. It's like the cartoon of you see like a goldfish, a horse, and a monkey and a squirrel and a snail. Say, okay, now everyone climb this tree. And this is the test. Climb the tree. All right. And, all right. Like I think it was Einstein said, if you tell a fish to ride a bicycle, it's going to spend the rest of its life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah. Right? Oh gosh, and this happens. It's really tragic.
Yeah. So awesome conversation. So before we go, why don't you just plug your websites again, just to let them know.
Yeah, I'm with Metro Detroit Nonviolent Communication. That's at mdnvc.org, or Metro Detroit Nonviolent Communication on Facebook. You can also find me on Facebook as Delilah Declare. And I'm affiliated with the New York Center for Nonviolent Communication, NYCNVC. I do facilitation and training with them in New York and beyond that. So awesome. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so at this
and also your Facebook name, Delilah Declare, so that's not your real name. So can you just explain to them real quick the significance of that name, or the last name?
Yeah, Declare is the last name of I want to be famous, a female anarchist from the 1800s. She was also from Michigan, where I live. And she ultimately was an anarchist without labels, but she was a prolific writer, just wrote really beautiful, insightful things about humanity, and was really an inspiring figure for me, as libertarianism, anarchism tends to be a pretty male-dominated little subculture. So it's just great, and I would love to see more people know about her as Voluntaryist Declare, Decleyre. If you Google her, you can find the wiki page. Her life is fascinating, the story of her life, and check out some of her writings and see what you think.
Cool. So before we go, just can you give people a message, like, for those parents that are interested in unschooling or homeschooling, or are scared, or also for those parents who are on the fence about it? What would you tell them?
I would say that in the beginning I was scared too. I had no idea if this was going to work, if I was just totally crazy. I was afraid of being accepted and having belonging with my friends and my family, and I was scared about getting the criticism from them and the acceptance from them, and all of the different cultural expectations that we have, and also to trust myself to be able to handle being with my kids all the time, and to be able to provide the resources for them to learn. And I found through experience that it really has been one of the best choices I've ever made in my entire life. I get to be with my kids. I get to watch them learn and grow and develop over time. I get to have really powerful, meaningful relationships with them, and I I've also gained a lot of self-trust through this process and a lot of self-knowledge and awareness about myself. I've learned more than I ever did in public school through unschooling, believe it or not. And a big part of the process was deschooling myself and challenging some of those beliefs that I adopted from the culture and from being in a school system, like that you have to be taught things and you need to know certain things by certain times, and it's not true. And yeah, like my son Noah learned how to read almost without any help. Like, he was really motivated to do it on his own, and he was like 4.5 or something like this. And that was one of the things I was really concerned about. Like, how can I teach a kid how to read, you know? But I didn't have to teach him. He just came to me with questions, and all I did was answer them. It's that simple.
Exactly.
Just answer the questions, provide them, accept them, and love them, and you'll be blown away. You won't regret it.
Beautiful.
And also, it's not for everyone, too. You know, it's not for everyone without support. You've got to be able to find support and have community. And fortunately, with the internet, it's totally possible to connect with other people who are considering these other approaches. So seek those people out, get connected with them, develop a network so that, you know, even though you're doing something totally different than the culture around you, you're not alone, no matter where you are. So
yeah, that's so important. Networking with people, you know, meeting other homeschoolers, unschoolers in the area. Facebook groups.
Yeah.
It's so important because it's easy to be isolated, and you know, it's not about, you know, some people think, like, I tell them homeschooling and like, wait, so you just lock them in a room and you throw books at them and what? You give them food occasionally? Is that what you do? Yeah, exactly. I treat them like a prisoner. It's my hostage.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of
no, that's what happens when they go to school, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So got a lot of education to do with ourselves and other people who are, you know, interested in trying this out. So awesome conversation. Katie, thank you very much for coming on the show. So if anyone wants to donate, do you receive any donations on your website? Do you have any options?
I don't, you know, I might want to try that out.
Yeah,
if you're suggesting it. Yeah.
Why not? You know, if people want to help you out, you know, they like your cause, and you know, they want to support you through other means, you know. So yeah, why not? Don't turn it any avenues of you know, income down. But
you're right. I haven't explored all my possibilities here. What have I been doing?
See that? See, we're learning right now.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly.
So if anybody wants to donate to me, my show, you can do so through Bitcoin and PayPal. And also be accepting Patreon quite soon. I just got to set up the account. I know I keep saying that. I'm a procrastinator, but I need another guy. I need someone else to do. I got so much stuff going on. It's like
personal assistant time.
Yeah, it's like, I guess that's when you know you have to hire somebody, right? It's like,
yeah,
you're like, I can't sleep anymore. I just have to do stuff. You know, sleeping is just, it's like, it's so annoying. It's like you just gotta sleep, and that's time that you could have spent doing stuff, doing something valuable.
Totally feel you, yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Funny. So, all right. So I hear the kids asking questions. You know, she needs to get back to her unschooling. So. Thank you very much, Katie. Awesome conversation. Really enjoyed it. Maybe we'll have you on again in the future to hear how you've been, any updates going on with you. I'm sure there's always something new to talk about with the unschooling world.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So this is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network, and also theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. And there she has her anarchist cat right there on her lap. So very cool. Very fitting. See that beautiful cat? What kind of cat is that?
I didn't hear that.
You know what kind of cat that is?
Oh, it's a Lynx Point Siamese.
Wow, very nice. Beautiful eyes. Look at that. Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. So beautiful. So thanks everyone for listening. So have a great night. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.